Well, then let's jump into another episode of Kicking Tables. We are so honored to have another fellow Canadian on the show with us, Taylor Gittins, the creator of Instant Warfare. Instant Warfare is coming to Kickstarter on September 15th. Taylor, welcome to Kicking Tables, and thanks for being another fellow Canadian.
Yeah, well, my pleasure being Canadian. I was born that way, I guess.
How's it going, eh?
Yeah, born and raised in Calgary. Thank you for having me.
Of course,
glad to have you here. You feel obligated to apologize for it at some point, I'm sure, too.
So Chico and I have played Instant Warfare. In fact, our preview is up now, so everybody can go check that out. But Taylor, give us the lowdown of this game. What kind of game is it for those who don't know it yet? How does it play, and what is it?
So, to sum it up, it's a dice roller battle, right? You got 2 dice, attack and weapon dice. You roll those, and the player you are attacking rolls the defense dice. It's kind of like Risk, but with custom icons.
Okay.
Right? And then it's also got basically board pieces for each player, right? Yep. And you place your troop tokens on there, kind of. So, where it would be kind of like Risk, except for instead of a map, you are taking down their army based on what troops they have.
Yeah, it's a very simplified game. Like it's very simple. I loved it. I thought it was great. Of course, I totally obliterated Tico.
I
smoked him.
I had the worst dice rolls I have ever had in the existence of my entire life while playing this game, and I still had fun.
Yeah, we just wanted to keep playing. So give our audience an idea of how a round of play goes for players. What are you doing on each of your turns?
So on each of your turns, you basically have a decision. Well, your first turn is the easiest, but so basically you just have to roll the dice. Literally, you're like, hey, Joey, I would like to attack your helicopter, and you huck the dice at the guy, and that's your turn, and then they respond with their dice. After the first turn, you start collecting action cards, which I believe I've got kicking around here, right? Little action cards. So you'd end up with 3 of these in your hand, and you decide before rolling said dice, would I rather use a card which guarantees whatever I want to do,
right?
Or do I want to take the gamble on the dice,
right?
And that's essentially it. And then you basically just look at the outcome and do a little mathematical formula kind of thing and find out who loses.
Exactly. It's not simple. It is really a very simple game to play. And that's why I think that's one of the things we loved about it was how simple it was to learn, but it felt a little strategic, deciding which enemies or which of the different troops to attack, and going from there. And then, of course, using your cards strategically, either as offense or defense, which is fantastic.
Particularly when you have, you only have a hand size of 3, so you're like, when you have to discard, it's like, well, I'm not going to use this one, and you discard it, and then immediately that's the one that you needed to be able to defend against.
Yep. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Every time.
Well, it was okay. So I'm like a super dork, right? But I have a problem where I don't have enough super dork friends, right?
I feel you.
Right, so I had to come up with some way to cram as much strategy as possible into literally nothing, right? Just that was kind of what drove the entire idea, is that I am sick of playing Uno and War and all the most simple games. I mean, I like them, but for one of these super dorks, it's kind of hard to keep that enthusiasm. So I was like, what? Let's come up with something.
Well, let's talk about how did you come up with this? Is this just like one of those situations where you're like, I want to play a game, and you just started like chucking some dice around and figuring out how that's going to come into it? What was the path to existence for this game?
Oh, it's a pretty good one. So it started actually with playing. I was playing Risk. Yes, I was playing Risk with my in-laws, and one of my in-laws happens to be my nephew Joseph, who was 7 years old at the time. And he basically came up with the game all on his own.
Really?
Really, like he really did. He came up, he's like, well, what if this wasn't numbers? What if this was the weapons and this was the number, right? And it was like, and the number, so if you rolled a 6 and you rolled a bullet, it would I forget exactly how he described it. He's a 7-year-old, right?
Yeah, of
And I
course.
was like, that's like genius, man. Let's keep chatting. And so, me being a graphic designer, I was like, you know what? I'll try it out. I'll make my nephew a game, a little simple dice game. And it was literally that's all he thought about, just the dice. He
Right.
didn't, and it was like, if I throw, I win. You throw, you win. And then there was no like turn two. It was just kind of like a
Oh.
one-off
One and
kind of game idea.
That's a very quick
Right.
game.
Very quick game, but I thought it was super genius, and I was like, well, hey, if you want to do this, I can come up with some icons and make your little game. And so then I threw that game to the Wildfire. I let some friends play it, and they're like, this is a cool idea. It's obviously missing a lot. And then basically, so you guys played it.
Yeah.
So then it was essentially simplified, or well, it was made from a simple dice game into this board that you guys played with, right?
You're right.
Yep.
Yes.
But instead of it being the board, it was a card given to each player, and you played as the tank, and you played as the helicopter,
Okay.
Okay.
right? And so you had special abilities based on who you were.
Right.
But that, for me, Super Dork Time, was like, this is still really basic and simple, and I'm not going to be able to play this forever. So I want to make it more complicated. Well, how do I do that? Well, I grabbed all 6 players that I had designed, and I put them onto a little table,
Right.
right? And then zoomed out from the previous game and made it so that instead of you having a card for each player, now you've got political cards.
Yep.
So essentially, I zoomed out and put the old game onto a single board piece that represents each player,
Okay.
and gave everybody else that same ability. And then it was like, okay, well, how do we give people unique abilities? Well, political cards,
Right. Yes.
And the action cards were the last thing added, and it was basically because, well, I was sick of the chance. Nobody likes to play dice and have no problem. Well, some people like to, but like there's no chance of being able to control the battle,
Right.
right? So
Yep.
I was like, well, we got to do something with that. And then I was getting feedback on, oh, you should add weather systems, and you should add some sort of power tokens, not just the little white tokens. I want different tokens that mean different things, and all these. And I'm like, well, action cards. Cards have the most versatility. Why not add some action cards? They'll solve my problems, and they'll give me options to create solutions to what everybody wants to add.
Right. Well, it's funny you bring up the weather systems, because isn't that something in one of the expansions you have planned? So you have ideas for your base one, which is military warfare, but you also have other ones, feudal warfare, and I want to say I think there's cursed, which is like a supernatural one type thing. Tell us about those other versions, and how are they different? Do they bring something new to the game?
Oh yes. So essentially, like I was saying, it was all built by playtesters. It was all built by complaints, right? I'm a web developer, graphic designer. My whole job is about finding solutions. So the first problem people had is I want to do more damage. Well, I can't do that without making the game too fast.
Right.
So that's where feudal warfare came into play. So these troops do more damage.
Okay.
But at the same time, you also get red troop tokens, right?
Okay.
And so while you do more damage, the red troop tokens keep you alive.
Oh.
Right? So that was a way to solve the problem and let people do more damage. So the feudal warfare, what that one ended up being, is that now you are able to steal. Like, I don't know if you guys were able to play with the political cards.
We didn't. No, it was because it was
Okay,
it was the two of us. Yeah.
So those are kind of like the unique abilities for each player, right?
Yeah.
And so there's the radicals, which are the fascist and the anarchist in the base game, and those are like super duper overpowered players. Well, what the feudal one does is it allows you to, using these tokens, which are essentially nobility, you earn nobility throughout the game, and they are, so it's not just a regular troop, it is a noble troop. And if you have a large amount of if you have the most nobility within your army, then when a certain action card is drawn, you have the opportunity to become the next emperor. And that essentially means that if you have the highest amount of nobility, you can steal the fascist card. You can steal the anarchist card.
Okay.
Interesting.
Right? So
Okay.
I love that your expansions are not just reskins of the military going to feudal Japan. It's not just a reskin; it's actually new mechanics, which is fantastic.
Yeah, well, and that was like I thought about it. I was like, you know what? I like making pretty pictures and stuff. Sure, I could make it reskin, but like, what's the point, really?
Yeah.
Right.
And then when people were like, "Well, I want to do more damage," I'm like, "Well, hey, there you go. That justifies me making samurai pictures." Woohoo!
And tell us about the other expansions. What are the other ones you have planned?
So again, we had one with, like I was saying earlier, the mythical one. So
We're mythical, yes.
They wanted to make. They didn't really complain. They just wanted an additional feature of weather systems. So with this one, all said and done, is you now get the green tokens, which are not troops. They are on the side of your board, and you kind of use them like currency. You earn them throughout the game, and they are tributes that you pay to Mother Nature to unleash said storms. Spells, It's all mythical stuff, right? So it's like there's elves and ogres and centaurs and that kind of troops instead of your helicopters and whatnot.
That's awesome.
Right? And so you use your currency as a tribute to Mother Nature to unleash a storm, which essentially, one storm, for example, stops you from being able to use your dice.
Oh.
If you have that storm over top of you, you cannot use your dice. You can imagine how big of an impact that has on your gameplay.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because you're limited. You're limited to just your cards, right? And if your cards are not attacks, okay.
Right. So you can only have one storm over your head at one time, but there's also imagine. I guess I could use that as an example. I'll use the mythical one because that's more accurate. So this is the players around the table.
Yeah.
And let's say this guy has the storm which stops you from using your dice, and then this guy has a storm that stops him from using the action cards. At a certain point, someone may play a card that is called the Winds of Change, and that basically means, boom. Oh, I'm going the wrong direction, right? But it moves the storms around.
Wow. Okay.
Right. And so that way you're not stuck with never using dice the entire game. There is cards that allow you to obliterate the storm above your head, move it to another player.
That's amazing.
The whole table around. It even has like it has Uno features in it. Actually, it's got the skip a turn, change play direction. The mythical warfare is kind of like you don't know what's going to happen and you have very little control.
That sounds amazing, though. I love it.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, it's got those extra features that basically allow for the storms for a little bit more randomness to the game in general, not to your play, because you actually have more options and you are more able to strategize in that sense, but all your new mechanics are designed to thwart you, right?
All right. You have a method of combining the sets as well. I think it was a group warfare it was called. Talk to us a little bit about how that works.
First, I want to get this one because it's my favorite. This
okay.
The cursed one.
One more.
Untouched. So with the cursed one, it's now I'll preface this. I am a Christian, and it doesn't offend me, but it may offend others, right? It's the apocalypse, and it's not an accurate apocalypse from Revelation.
Okay.
Here's my disclaimer.
Fair enough.
But basically, so this one, you have the trumpet card, and there's 7 trumpets, right? The apocalypse.
Yes. Yeah.
And the first 4 trumpets that are their action cards. The first 4 trumpets that you pull unleash one of the horsemen.
Okay, this is great. This is great.
Right? So if you pull that trumpet card and become the horseman of the apocalypse, where war, famine, plague, death, whatever, this is where teams come into play.
Okay.
Right? So now you are identified as an evil guy, right? You are officially the one of the 4 horsemen.
One of the 4 horsemen.
Okay. Right? And so randomly selected, depending on who pulls those trumpet cards, that identifies whose team you are on. Over the course of essentially 2 or 3 rounds, you will be split into 2 groups, the good guys and the bad guys.
That's pretty cool. Okay.
Right? And so that's the cursed one, and that one comes with the werewolves and the vampires and all that kind of stuff for troops. But so that's the 3 base expansions, I guess I could call them.
Right.
And then now we can get to the group, which is
group warfare. Yeah.
So I while doing this and while dealing with the pandemic and the incredible difficulty in trying to playtest in general, I decided I needed to come up with a solo mode. I knew that people would like that anyway, but I needed to figure it out playtesting, right?
For sure.
So, so now that you've got, this is why I grabbed my little doohickeys here. But basically, now you've got your different boards that you can have on your team, right? So you could have a cursed army, I'm trying to make sure I'm reading this. So mythical, the military, and then you've got, so you got your 4 ones that we just went over: military, feudal, mythical, and cursed. And you can choose how you want to select your army. Your army is now 4 boards wide in the solo mode.
Okay.
Okay.
Right? And so now you basically roll. These are not printed, but you can see it becomes quite the dice package.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So this is essentially what you roll when you are attacking.
Okay.
Wow.
Right? So you now are attacking with a different weapon dice for each of your army types that you have in your army. Right? So when you do a deadly shot, these are the different weapons that are used in your one move.
Okay.
So you're able to act as 4 armies at once against the dungeon boss, which I'll show you in a second. So basically, it just adds, the only real addition is a yellow and a black dice, which are the dungeon dice. They are used by both you and the boss.
Okay.
They're only used by you if you are playing it either in the solo mode, or you are controlling all 4 troops.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So that just makes it so that you are, and what the yellow dice does basically is on top of your attack. So let's say you get a deadly shot with all 4 weapons, and you're just going ham on this guy, right? The yellow dice adds the role-specific ability. So on there's the healer. So not only are you doing damage, your healer heals your tank. You roll the tank on your yellow dice, and not only are you doing damage, but your tank now takes the front position essentially and mitigates the next attack.
Okay.
Right? And so basically your yellow dice defines the additional move on top of your attack that is role specific. Your damage dealer, if you roll that one, basically just increases the effect of your attack. Right?
Okay.
And your support roll, if you roll that one, so on your side it's a support. On the enemy side, that's the dungeon boss. So what happens then is you get to then, instead of just going with whatever, if you roll the support icon, you get to choose which of your role abilities to use.
Okay. Okay.
Right? Does that make sense?
There's a lot more, definitely a lot more going on in the group warfare, which is
Yes.
actually fantastic. But so, in order to do group warfare, do you need all 4, or can you just do it with just 2 of them, 3 of them?
The way it would work is you need to have 4 armies, but
Okay.
that doesn't mean they have to be 4 different armies.
Okay.
Okay.
Right? So you can use 4 military armies, 4 feudal armies, 4 mythical armies. You can do a mix and match and create your army with 2 feudal and 1 mythical and 1 cursed, as an example. And that's kind of the character building RPG-esque kind of method to creating your set of 4 armies.
Right.
And then depending on, so that's solo, but you can also play, so instead of you playing as all 4 of those armies, you could have 4 players playing one of those armies each on a team. Or you could have, let's say, 2 players each playing as 4 armies against the boss. Right? And basically everyone has the ability to completely customize their army. And that's like, not only do you select the type of army, you then, just like in the base game, select which troops of which army.
Right.
Right? So there's a fairly large, I guess, character building moment in the beginning of group warfare. But once you're set up and everything's honky-dory, you are back to the basics of the base game, right? You're just rolling the dice or using the action cards.
Okay.
It's not complicated after you get it set up. It's just a little more character building, well, much more character building in the beginning. And the entire idea, like there's your dungeon boss, all 4 pieces, right?
Okay.
So,
cool.
so your main goal or your first goal is to get past the tank, because you got to get through the tank and you can't damage anybody else. After you're through him, you have to then get through the healer and the damage dealer. That's the red guy there, right? And this is where you kind of make a choice. Who are you going to attack, right? Do you want to attack the guy who's healing? Because this guy could bring back the tank, right? So you could go for the healer as probably like a safe bet, but that's leaving the damage dealer to kill you in the meantime. or you could take out the damage dealer and take the risk that the healer won't bring back the tank. It's kind of a decision time, right? And then once you've, sorry, I had to drop this, but once you've gotten through those two, then it's time to take on the big baddie, the dungeon boss himself, the bee's knees of all problems, and he basically just wrecks your day.
So you've got a lot going on here. You've got your base game, you've got the expansions, you've got the solo mode with the boss. How are you presenting these on Kickstarter? Is there going to be different tiers to get different versions, or what are the choices backers are going to have?
So I've been through this like a million times in my head, and the way it's ended up is that through the Kickstarter, I'm not going to treat them as expansions, really. I'm going to treat each and every one of these as its own standalone game.
Okay.
So that because it's a Kickstarter and this is my first board game, I don't know, maybe people don't like military themes. Maybe most people like the feudal thing best. I don't know. And so with my first game, I'm totally just going to leave it up to the audience to decide which base game, which 8-player base game they would like.
Right.
And then after it's all said and done, I might end up deciding that we can keep them as 8-player base games, but the original plan was to have the 8-player military version, and then the expansions for Mythical, Feudal, and Cursed being 4-player expansions.
Okay.
Right? Okay. And then the Group Warfare is all of that combined. So the Group Warfare is still that. It's 8 military and 4 of the other 3 plus the boss.
Okay.
But the other 3, so mythical, feudal, cursed, and military, are all going to be standalone 8-player games.
So will you just back it and then you'll choose at the end which one you want, or do you just?
No, they're separate. There'll be separate
tiers.
Pledges. Yeah, separate pledges.
Okay.
And you just basically select which one you want. I was thinking I'd have to create them into like step goals or something like that. But realistically, for print purposes and for like the cost incurred, it's realistically only just a few extra tokens of a different color,
right?
And extra 36 cards, I believe, in each. So it's like, oh well, I can cost that out, and I can just make sure it's available right away. I don't need to play this game of trying to trick people into purchasing more. I just give them what they want right off the hop, and hopefully they like it.
And I'm assuming there's going to be an all-in pledge to get all of them.
Yeah, so that's the Group Warfare bundle. The Group Warfare.
Okay, Group Warfare is all of them. Okay.
Is all of them. It is all of them combined. You cannot get. So the reason for that is because the way Group Warfare is designed, you want to have that character creation phase in the beginning.
Yep.
And so limiting that is just it takes away from the Group Warfare game itself.
Yeah, that's fair.
Right. So I just wanted to make sure. Yeah. So the Group Warfare is everything combined, but the feudal expansion is going to be exclusive to Kickstarter. So this version of the Group Warfare box that includes feudal will not be available afterwards.
Okay.
I mean, obviously,
so
the audience can convince me to bring it back at some point. I would love for that to happen, but at the moment, my plan is to replace the Feudal Warfare game box entirely. I'm waiting for feedback. I'll take you guys' votes. So far, it looks like Pirates or Zulus.
Pirates or
Zulus.
I like Pirates.
I don't know, man.
Right? Those are the themes that people seem to like. I've got great mechanics in mind, but so basically the Feudal Warfare box will be replaced with a new theme after the whole Kickstarter and everybody gets their boxes, and I can get back to designing this next piece. But
do you have a lot more different sets, expansions, that you plan that, this is successful, you're going to do something else down the road with these? Do you have a lot more ideas in play?
Well, there's the idea of like a deluxe version. So with nicer tokens, with like some fancy schmancy tokens. But the thing is, those tokens, as you guys played it, they are just tokens. You don't need them to be all that fancy. And with 200 tokens per box, making those custom is probably not worth it for the pocket. So there is a deluxe version for people that want it. I'm just trying to get that ironed out. But that'll be coming after Kickstarter. That won't be part of Kickstarter.
Okay.
That's a future plan, I guess. And then I've got a few ideas for expansions, for new themes, new expansions. but I kind of want to play it by ear in that regard and just see
how the first Kickstarter goes first.
Yeah.
right, because maybe people just don't like a certain expansion as much, and maybe I had my whole premise for another idea kind of based on people liking that first one.
Yeah.
You know, we'll see. We'll see what ends up happening. But I do
Awesome.
have plans. Specifically, I have more. I'm hoping to not concentrate on Instant Warfare as much after this. Just get it into production, make it available.
Get something else up.
And I've got two other games that I really, really want to get into.
Awesome. Well, we'll definitely have you back on the show for those games once you've got them ready to go.
All right. Well, we're at the part of our show where we want to learn a little bit more about you as a gamer. So we've got 8 questions, rapid fire, lightning round. First thing that comes to the top of your head. You ready?
Ready.
All right. Game that you love but always lose.
I don't lose. Actually, no. They're Phase 10. Phase 10. I like it. I never, ever win it.
Okay. Dice or cards?
I like dice.
Yeah.
All right. Your favorite modern game?
Favorite modern game? Well, I was really, really hoping to get my hands on Adventures of Tennessee James, but that didn't fly. Well, I mean, all the year I've been playing Instant Warfare, so let's see. What would be a modern game that I really, really like? Well, I mean, I don't know. Is D&D considered a modern game? That's kind of been around for a while.
Depends on your edition, but sure.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, hey,
that's the one I keep coming back to.
I'm playing it every week, so sure.
Right.
All right. Your favorite classic game?
Favorite classic game.
D&D.
Yeah, right. Well, when I think classic game, I don't know. I think of games like when I was a kid, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So I would say Monopoly because I don't think I've lost a game of Monopoly in 20 years.
Wow.
All right.
Wow. Okay.
I think it's actually since I started playing I played the one on PlayStation, like the digital version.
Okay.
And that kind of taught me how to keep track of my net worth and right. And so ever since I played the digital version, I just boom, I win.
Nice. Awesome.
All right. Science fiction or fantasy?
Ooh, that's a tough one. That's a really tough one. I'm gonna have to say fantasy.
Okay.
But I really like it when I can see or do a crossover.
Oh yeah. Well, that's Star Wars.
Right.
Star Wars is a science fiction fantasy.
Right.
So there you go.
All right. Game you most want to add to your collection?
Well, that one.
Tennessee James.
That's Tennessee James.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Also, actually, I never got in on the Marvel United, and that is definitely one that I just love the figurines. They're great.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, they are great.
Right.
All right. Game you always win?
And I've already crossed Monopoly off the list. I'm gonna say game that I always win. I would say pretty much any legacy game.
Yeah, that's
I
fair.
don't know any game that includes a mathematical formula. I typically figure it.
Okay, that's fair.
Awesome.
Or I don't know. It's hard to say. I win too many games. Nobody likes to play with me for too much.
That's my problem too.
Right.
Your most recent game purchase?
Most recent game purchase. Well, my most recent game purchase, in a general sense, not board game, would be No Man's Sky. I finally got into that.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
we'll take it.
But yeah, I don't know.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I buy a lot of games, man.
That's awesome. Well, no, this is just a way to get to know you as a gamer, so that's awesome. But Taylor, it's been such a pleasure having you on the show, learning more about the game. We love the game, so everybody go check out our review of it. That's on the channel now. But Taylor, before we let you go, give us your final thoughts on the game. Why should people back it, and what do you really want them to know about it?
I think that they should back it if they want to. I don't want to convince them to do anything, and that's why I opened it up for you to have 5 entirely separate options to choose from based on your theme or your mechanics of pleasure. I mean, I'd say that that's the reason to back it, is that you've got the choices and they are not hidden behind some sort of step goal. You get what you want right off the hop,
Right.
And but the idea for the game, I'd say it's also a simple game. You can play with anybody. You can play it with your 4-year-old nephew or niece. You can play it with your grandma. You can play it with anybody.
Yeah.
And it's not so simple as you will get over it after a day. You do learn the strategies. If you play it 3-4 times, you'll still be learning how to play the odds, as one would say.
Yeah, and we can attest to that. That is absolutely true.
Yeah.
Simple game to learn with a lot of strategy that you'll learn as you keep playing it, which is fantastic. You got a great game on your hands. Thank you so much for being on the show, and good luck with the campaign. We'll be watching it with bated breath because we really want to see it backed. I love the idea of all the expansions, so good luck to you, Taylor, and thanks so much.
And I wanted one more thing. I was waiting for your question about Star Wars versus Star Trek.
Nice. I've got the Mace Windu lightsaber right over there. Nice. Awesome. Thanks so much, Taylor.
Well, thank you everybody for watching. I really appreciate it. I hope to see you at the Kickstarter. Please support. I would really appreciate that as well. I hope you enjoy the game. I've tried to make it a version for everybody. And please, before you leave this video, subscribe. There's the button down there. This is OMG Nexus. They rock.